Thank you. And now let's bring him up. Here he is, your friend of mine, host of Sacred Grounds. And Brady.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
So proud to be here and glad. And John and Rob both originally invited me to do this, so we should give them a round of applause. Just for, if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for this, I wouldn't be here. So, just to be really brief, I had many ideas about what I wanted to do when I was setting this up, and they all kept on changing. So I decided to heck with really planning things. I picked out a bunch of my favorites, and then I spent a couple days whittling them all down. So then I thought, well, let's do something with a little bit of order. So this first poem is inspired by Sally Love Saunders, who has a workshop, actually, which happened today, and a week from today, next Saturday, the 9th, I'll be there as the feature at hers. It's at the Cultural Integration Fellowship, 3rd and Fulton. And essentially the format is you sit in a circle, and sometimes you actually write a poem, then you read those things, and then there's an open circle of other poems. So it's really nice. But this one came out of that. This is called The Naming of Me. I began as Daniel Philip Brady, named after my father's ancient clan for an uncle on the Shannon side of the family, who was a priest and well respected in both our family and community. Named after a biblical figure whose dealings with lions made for odd considerations or connections, considering that my sun sign is Leo, and whose penchant for prophecy intersects neatly with my muse and how I give it the voice. When I was young, my mother called me by my first name, if all was well. If all was certainly not, it would be called my full name, Daniel Philip Michael Brady. Will you please come here right now? I was Daniello Cabello, my fine fat fellow, when Mom was in a bright mood, if I had gotten her to laugh or we were just being conversational. I was Danny Boy for a time because that song was popular when I was young. I disliked it, however, because, although I could not fathom why at the time, I was like 4, I would cry unconsolably every time it came on the radio. Only later as a young man, when I listened to the words, did I get an inkling into that mystery, but still, after all those years, I don't understand how it was that I had reacted so strongly. I was high water when I first wore a pair of hand-me-down pants because I had to wear them up, and noticeably so, until I grew into them, and then I became, well, Mr. Floods. By high school, there was the silly adventures and misadventures of Captain Zapp, and whose dramatic demeanor and profile can still be seen in faded photographs taken by my longtime friend, Niels Nielsen. There was Daniel P. Iron Fist Brady, either a legendary but non-existent prize fighter, or the bizarre ruler of Bratysylvania, one of the 3 nations on the imaginary Isle of Azafagva, a high school prank we pulled on no one except ourselves, no matter that we had our hats, uniforms, passports, maps, made-up money, or very, very secret handshakes. I was Noah for a time when I needed a name that didn't want to give my real one, and I was surprised how well that caught on. The joke lasted for months, but that's college dorm life for you. I became Mr. Brady when I landed my first job, got junk mail, was called by telemarketers, or buttonholed on the street. I was this for some long time. I also became teacher, dad, or even mom to my students as I taught them. To 8th graders, I was Mr. Gnarly, Mr. B, and eventually Bungalow Dan as well. Just before we got married, when we considered taking or giving names, we considered combining our names so we'd each have to change, and so we mixed our various names into a hodgepodge, and McHalterbells was the best of the lot. I will never forget that, nor will Wendy. Then came the names that she and I had for each other. There are dozens of those. Chief among them are Boo, spelled B-U, which is short for Hugger-Boo, which is engraved on the interface of our wedding rings, even if very abbreviated. I've had other names, of course, each of which, if described and linked, as I've done here with the precious few, would make for a biography of sorts, of memories, of times, places, and faces, to be sure, and much, much more. And it all makes me wonder how to respond when someone says, "So what's in a name?" Thank you. I don't know why this is called Angels, but it's called Angels. And it's all, well, you'll see. But it's about who inspired me when I was asked that. And I wrote a paragraph, and then it became this poem. How and when does a story begin? How are we to know? When I think on it, any tale, no matter its size, must begin long ago. So when asked who influenced me, I gave my friend this analogy. Consider a stream, I said, even a small one, near to hand. Is not its course ever guided by the contours of the land? Is it not deflected by every rock, bit of soil, or living thing with which it coexists before and after the stony lip of its spring? And are not all these things but a postscript proceeding from a source which charges the nature of the stream and so affects its discourse? Nor should I fail to say that forests and men alike surely do amend it, for its worth is clear to those temporal beings who can apprehend it. But the fishes and all the living things cannot be the stream, nor, for that matter, can it be the water, or so it would seem, for the flow is ever carried off, even as we watch for sport, whether by evaporation or gravity's simple transport. It's surely not its path, or the things it's carried off, nor could it be its remains, a shallow, drying trough. A stream, then, is a time and place dependent on conditions which, if the truth be told, have the utmost antiquity as its origins. Preconditions which, if they be scientifically analyzed withal, stretch back to the beginnings of time and matter immemorial. And perforce, do they not, I began to wax, extend onward in time until the very edge of doom itself. Imagine a stream so sublime. And so full circle I came as my analogy found its end. What are the credits I must roll to answer, my friend? No less than everyone who has ever been or may yet be. Nothing less than that full chorus, say I, have clearly influenced me. There you go. That's who I am, folks. And so I went back into the vault of old poems. And this is from, the next couple or three are based on work, life, or the corporations and stuff like that. This is untitled. File, Perch, Clerk and Boss peck at the stuff laid out before them. They hunt and peck like giant chickens in the office. We all are giant chickens. Where is the gravy? And this is a similar time period's 80s, and it's a true story. The facts and figures are true. My poetic garbling of them is my poetic garbling of them. Did you know that the glory us, B of A, their gold initials shine on solid state backing, a decor more constant than a hairy Bonzel drone, and tellers that just don't, conducted a study using 100,000, quote, clearly distinguishable, ... eminently identifiable, ... paperclips, unquote. They found that maybe some 25,000 were just thrown away, apparently without justification that was tangibly identifiable. 10,000 were used for ear cleaners, 10,000 were used for fingernails, but, quote, only maybe 15,000 were used as paperclips, and the remaining, some 30,000, were twisted, bent, or mutilated, quite beyond their structural capacity to perform the functions for which they were intentionally designed during phone calls or conversations on the job, period, unquote. Now this is an extremely reduced version of this very long thing. I'm going to skip around through it. You've read books, and you see the book jackets, and the book jackets try to sell you on the book. And this is the ultimate book jacket cover for a book by the title of It, as you will come to see. So this is the book jacket cover. This is It, the gripping story of lust, sin, and greed. It exposes the terrifying, extensive web of power wielded by the bizarre devil cults and their strange practices with virgin animals used in their sacrifices to Baal, sacrifices that are performed in the lower levels of the best of the Washington, D.C. restaurants and served to unknowing patrons in a subtle attempt to control the minds of the people who lead our great nation. It is the saga of two people set against an all too probable death, a dying athlete mercenary whose first love explodes into human self-actualization, compassion, justice, and equality as he explores his sensitive passions. It is her experiences of love right in the middle of the hottest part of an African hell that few survive to talk about. It is the book that has no agent, no publisher, no editing, no rewrite, no market. It is unmitigated, uncensored, raw, and vile. It has no equal, no parallel. It is the most telling drama of our time. For 20 years, the author wrote It. It gathered momentum as it was written. It names names, account numbers, dates, places, faces, and figures before the public as never before. It is transcriptions of recorded conversations. It delves into Gene Dixon's method of determining the sun side of the Bermuda Triangle. It exposes the psychology of some of the greatest politicians of our time, Khrushchev's latent homosexuality and how this affected the Cuban Missile Crisis, Idi Amin's castration complex, Indira Gandhi's penis envy, plus actual folders of her at a recent punk rock concert, and reveals Willy Brandt's secret passions. It is the world of 16-year-old David, a runaway from a tyrant father and an alcoholic mother whose materialistic middle-class values took their toll on everyone. Her wild, fervently frantic, malevolent maelstrom of sadomasochistic, paranoid delusions of grandeur drove David out and away to the summer of love, where he meets the upbeat philosophy of hippie guru Timothy Leary and dedicates his life to the changing of society as he spends his idyllic youth in the flower generation's mini-city, the Haight-Ashbury. It exposes the connection between underarm deodorants and UFOs. It is the entire Frank Sinatra story. It exposes the psychic connection between Johnny Carson, Fred McMurray, Elvis Presley, and Joan of Arc. It moves, it's fast, it shakes, it quakes, it crawls on its belly like a reptile. It takes you to the jungles of Burma where the eye of the camera expresses for the first time the dance of the Black Angels of Fire, the legendary dance ritual of unknown origin which is supposed to give the participants universal knowledge and preserve their youth forever, but there is a price that few are willing to pay. It is the master plan of the unscrupulous Kennedy family and how it connects with that of the Krupp and the deal they made with Adolf Hitler at the Russian chiefs of staff and the final days of that war. It details the secret story of Cal Saber, whose inventiveness and intelligence becomes the only factor preventing the two superpowers from plunging toward World War III as they vie for the terrifying, terrible, horrible, awful, god-awful secret hidden in the wreck of the Titanic. It wanders down the sleazy alleyways of history, touches reluctantly upon the putrid vegetables of scandal, is revolted by the stench of waste, mass production, eroding individualism as it seeks to find the gold coin of truth and justice in a warehouse world where the sagging corrugated tin roof of God is mocked by the pasted-up posters of cynicism, bewildering detail that wanders page after page, chapter after amazing chapter. It will disturb and excite you, thrilling, enticing, a tale of adventure in human relationships, ... dramatic episodes, ... exotic vignettes, ... heady descriptive passes, gaudy and flamboyant, blood and sin, sex and murder, fresh and vigorous, ... grand entertainment, Baltimore Sun, completely new scandals, wow, New York Times, lively yet sublime, Newsweek, fast-paced yet reminiscent, Oakland Tribune, astonishing sex, Chicago Sun, crap, Reader's Digest. You have to read it, Daily News, Truckee, California. Quote, I couldn't put it down. It grabbed me right where it feels good and just wouldn't let go. And Jesus, it's still there now. Los Angeles Times. So I wasn't going to write that book when it was finished. So, I know. It goes on. So, These are also from that period, although a little bit later. This is the simple poem. It's called It Suits Him. In uniform, hard penis neurosis, retired, highway patrolman, looks for runaways. That's gross, huh? Yeah, oh, yeah, good and gross. I mean, this is another one on a similar vein, but more polite. Red, juicy, cannibals eating meat. This jungle world, dog-eat-dog rat race. Their cancers, revolution, eating them out. Capitalists chewing fatty beef, waiting for the special of the day. Working man's hands in rich brown stew. And now for a break, we go to insanity. The whites of her eyes float up in the black coffee, staring, accusing they always come back. I see her eyes float up in my orange juice. In hot brown chocolate they upset the marshmallow. I always spoon them out very, very carefully. I don't want to hurt them at all. Spoon them out onto the napkin and leave them, let them dry and stare at you. So this is still in the 80s or somewhere, and during that time I went to the Theosophical Society a lot, and they had a poetry thing there, and these next two poems are from that period. And this is a piece that someone helped me write, even though it is very short. Death, an ode. This cold kiss, most desirous and dizzy, the finished flesh lay still and gray. The skeleton, a trophy of scars, its mask with grinning jaws locked. Thank you. And now on the positive side, that was like about it. This is called Morning Song. Exhausted, fallen away, the lime blossoms give all they can to be with us. So, these are for you from the 7th garden. Smell these special limes, blessed by the birds whose fleet song taper this summer's eve. Come, walk with me here where Venus rises over the hills, unfolding in the heavens. Dawn's gossamer, she'll embroider each flower and blade, a morning song within each drop of dew. So if anybody ever asks you if you got a minute, you can think about this poem. In a minute, you are born. And in a minute, give or take this or that, you die. In a minute, the sun sets or rises, the flowers open and winds swirl, the dew forms or vanishes. Leaves fall or unfurl. Heartbeats and songs are inspired. The artist finds that moment a fine point in something, somewhere, and somehow. A painting is seen, reflections in a pool or a story found, in a memento or a stray thought, a song from a hint of melody, a bit of noise, or a bird or a brook. In a minute, the opening between dearth and despair, the longing chasm to open, to receive those casting off one's love, the great fall. Do you have a minute? Not on me. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. Will I recognize you? How can you do that? Get into one and out of another. Wait a minute. Huh, that's mixing terms. I mean, I've had some heavy times in my life, but how can you measure that? Give me a minute. I wish I could. Hold it a minute. Hold it? Hold it all? For a minute? I don't think that's possible. Give me a minute. Baby, I don't have that kind of time. Now this one is a product of when I first felt I was discovering my voice. I mean, all those other poems have a voice, but this one's saying, yeah, this sounds like a real poem. It's called Desire. Out on the veranda, it is quiet. A cool breeze greets my face. The crying and talking are hidden away. This is a big house. Its white adobe walls cool now. The wind touches trees. I look out over the houses. A guitar is somewhere, splendidly. My lips say these words, dead, she is dead. Her white hair will dry out, crumble to dust. I want to go away, away to the mountains. The illusions of memory, the colors of festival, the daily work and dinners ending in talks, disappear. I look out to remember the seabirds calling as the sky closes over the oceans. I taste the salt on my lips, wet. I remove my mother's black gloves from my pocket. The crumpled lace blooms in my palm. I cup them to my face, their scent of Sundays. It takes me years and years to answer. Someone calling my name. You're so very kind. This is called Whaling. Originally it was called The Art of Whaling, but the Greenpeace magazine didn't like that title. So I just changed it to Whaling. And they liked that, and they used it at one point. I can know why The Art of Whaling wouldn't work with them. I'm like, no, that's not an art, I'm sorry. Whaling. It comes in sea swells, graceful and slow. It likes to turn and roll gently as it moves through the water in migrations that circulate with the oceans, curving with the earth. Their swims cover thousands of miles that even the youngest make just after they're hardly born. Their broad mouths smile with their sea, and their eyes are quiet, pensive, and slow. They echo whistling queries across the broad gray ocean floors and in turn question the answers in casual conversation. They travel with the wind of the oceans in current and tide, touched by the moon on their backs, water, silver radiations of the spine. These creatures are touched more by the moon than we. And their hearts are big enough to sleep in. So now we come to a part, like there was a period that those were all poems from what I call my classic period, which was before the current period. Late 70s, mid 80s. And then in the early 90s, I got back into writing, but through haiku. So I'm going to read a few haiku, and then I'll go into more modern pieces, and we'll see where I am. Okay. Magnolia blossom, pristine, fallen onto mud. The bee still finds it. In the cleft of clover, the glistening dewdrop, all the sun's circle inside. And this is from Golden Gate Park. The old gardener trims a tree. Leaves fall to the pond. 3 koi pause. Swift. Over the pond, the rippled shadow, dragonfly low enough for the frog. None of them saw it. The stone I had skipped over 25 times or more. And no one saw it. I mean, I was counting. I was like,
I'm sorry, Dan. Could you do that one again, please?
Because of that?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Thank you. About the mop. Okay. None of them saw it. The stone I had skipped 25 times or more. And I would have won the contest. I would have won. But, look, anyway. Now this is from a camping trip. On the path, stepping over one ant only to come down on another. I tried. This is a typical haiku. Still pond, in reflection, fireflies circle the moon. And then I'll do these two haiku and then I'll go to the more modern films. Water strider, a kick, ripples the moon. And then this was from a music festival. I'm bored. What will he do with it? The ant crawling all over the green grape. And this is a more recent haiku, because it's 2012 and all that stuff is going through people's mind. This world's ending, not so much a concern as what comes next. Okay. Speaking of what comes next, there's this. These are now modern. There are ages that come and go, lands that vanish, seas which move. Time does not speak to us of these creatures. Time does not speak to us at all. It is heard that we are deaf. It would signal, but it is heard we are blind. It would do a song and dance, go the extra mile, give us the whole 9 yards. But we are not at home anymore on this world, and time knows that. That's why time is going its own way now, leaving us to ours. If we were wise, we'd take heed, ask after it, but we aren't wise, that is, so we won't. And it's not as if we haven't for the longest time seemed to care, not one little tiny bit. And now, now time has run out, and it's all on us. By the way, do you hear the fat lady singing? Just checking. So, the politics of modern times here. This is my Dear Ann letter, a letter to Ann Coulter, if you know Ann Coulter, and I was reviled by her as I am, or vice versa. This is for her. I want a girl who uses knee pads like a whore, so she won't snag her nylons on Rush Limbaugh's floor, who sips OxyContin with his tumbler of neat scotch as they frag amputees in a Vietnam vet's march, who licks Cuban cigars with G. Gordon Liddy and drinks with Tom DeLay because he thinks she's kind of pretty, who'd love to throw a brick at dumb old Howard Dean, then kickbox her way through the crowd to get away clean. A girl who'll tattoo a Hummer on her vibrator machine because it doesn't burn enough Iraqi gasoline. Yes, a girl who paves her own exclusive driveway with the headstones of those she's backstabbed in her day. A girl who makes lampshades that take away your breath from the fatty skin of liberals she skinned alive to death. With a blowtorch tongue that etches her initials into hippies on a rack for hot and sexy thrills. A girl with fascist delusions, fast and feckless, who attacks, who wears Ray-Bans at midnight, who creates her own facts, who gets real juicy dreaming of hot Nazi sex that finally sets her free, who loves a hate crime scene and her cheap law degree. I want a girl with a real short fuse and long, vicious rants, who disposes of the helpless, the poor, as she passionately pants. A real drive-by babe with her neocon hips tightly skirted in our flag, who will go down on a pulpit while eternally on the rag. Yes, dear God, I want a girl with a voice as pure as cyanide gas and a sweaty leather thong with swastikas on her skinny white ass. A girl whose machete wins her debates. I want someone bolder, with fingernails like razors, whose initials are Ann Coulter.
Yeah.
Dear Ann, your inspiration. Okay, so I'm going to finish with this piece called Jazz Solo. I like it, people like it, so I will do that, and we'll conclude with this. I want to thank you in advance for being such a great audience and being honored here. Thank you again. So here we go. Jazz solo. I mean to say jazz solo. Jazz is from the moment it is to the moment that it was. Is. Dig? See, I can scat like a cool cat and be where it's at, you know, the dee-da-bop, the boo-bop, the bee-bop, the bee-bop, the bee-bop, bee-bop, but being up here on the stage, scooping up something here up with this page, I mean to say this is for you, not for me, see? And I could be talking way out of my hat and not be all that, so I'll make my anthem so sweet and uplifting, till your soul is light and drifting up into that clear cerulean sky, till the Lord himself parts those glory clouds and said, my, hallelujah, but that good old boy can play it on the fly. But to get back to it, jazz, you see, this poor narrator can hardly hope to give you its meaning without seeming dope, without saying those things someone else has said, because I don't want to be demeaning or talking out of my head. But I can ask you real slow if you really know what it is that mixes up heat, beat, and beguile, what blends enchantment with soul and style. Because you better keep in mind that you best be where you're at, because mama ain't never allowed no double talk up in here, and that's that. See, it's an honest space, a free space, a space so spacious, well, my gracious, I could go on, but I couldn't begin to cast a spell. So you out there listening, well, you'll have to hear real well. Some y'all see my point already, my disguise being thin, but I'll try for you anyway to make it a win-win. And I know you know that you all want to go 8 miles high, hip-hopping over the globe so fly, making it here and there. At the same time, you wonder where. I know you know what I'm talking about isn't just chance or the drummer's chops that break up the dance, the brass and the springs beating up their things while the singer lets loose a wail that really, really tells the tale, even if it's only an idiot signifying nothing or being like me, kind of pale. But what gliding on the moonlight does, what swimming in the ancient sea was, what dream drifting in a daze is, what floating like unto a haze is. Jazz is the sound heard everywhere. You carry it with you when you hum soft air. I mean, this is jazz with a capital J or all caps all the way. And you can be skinny or playing it fat. And sometimes it strains over the old Hazarat or colors up the cumulus clouds high over Bali or gleams like Xanadu's mirage as you blink black tears from the shimmering light on the Rub al-Khali. It whispers over the Solomons and Bangalore. It echoes over the Rift Valley. It covets the great Pacific shore. It is the wavering light upon Tut's pyramids. It Transamerica's or the Notre Dame spires. It is the sound of this age. It's ever new. It conspires. So when you hear it, when I hear it, it's the bee's knees, the cat's PJs, a drunken jackass with his pants full of fleas. Ships at sea roll with the scroll. Clouds surmount the mountains in the cold, and everything is getting old. But jazz is from the moment that it is until it is now. To get back to it, think of everything you've ever heard, every dream you've ever tasted, and give me the word, just so it's not the makeups and breakups, mooing the moon, ancestral chains, or the myriad of mystified brains, just so it's not the blank look on every stranger's face, the disguise of the ordinary, a cut to the chase, the wrinkle in reality, the lovelorn thing, the changing times of nothing changing, and the sense of it all being one bright thing. No,
No, it's not ordinary, not in the least. This is what I mean about jazz. It's an ever-loving feast. I mean jazz with a capital J, and toss in some laughter, because jazz is what it is, and all that comes after. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. I salute you all. Run along over here.